So, I would like to welcome on stage our panelists. So please, Mauri. Yeah, this is you. Then a few of them you already met. Chris. Mohammed, just finished with his talk, had a short break. And we have
Hi.
The last one, Marcela, who is a service designer at Nordea, and she also will give a talk just a bit later today. Yeah, so stay tuned. And yeah, like, what do you think? You've seen the results? What do you think? How is it in your company? Would you have, on which stage would you be there? Yeah, maybe, Mohammed, what do you think? Like, because your company deal, I think it should be quite high, right?
Yes, so it's quite nice to see the results in here. It's quite surprising for three, but I believe every company has a different progression state, so keep persevering, you'll get there.
And what do you think, Marcela?
We are in this designers innovation, like bringing innovation to the company.
Oh, so that sounds pretty cool. And Mauri, I would be really curious to know how you think about our design team.
I voted for the first one, step 3, right? Design and innovation process.
Step 1.
I'm part of the mainstream, obviously. Yeah, I think we're there.
Yeah, that sounds great. But you know what? I often hear that, designers, they don't understand the business, and we just make the screens pretty. Would you agree or disagree with this? Maybe also Chris, because you're the only one here who's a non-designer.
Yeah.
What you experienced?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I disagree with the scale. Yeah, because I think there needs to be a step 5, which is design as a competitive advantage. And
maybe we should enhance.
And the fact that it's not there, maybe it's answering your question. I think designers need to understand that you're a little bit early in the game, but just in the same way that the business used to belong to the financiers, and now it's being taken over by technologists. Technologies, it just become a commodity in 5 years. And what's left after that is the people that understand the human element. That's what's going to become the real competitive advantage. So, at the risk of being controversial, I think you need to start realizing that. And that's good because you're early in the curve. But
yeah, it's a powerful insight, that we need to lead it. But have you ever experienced at your companies when you needed to prove that you provide, some business value, and some people may be questioning that, that you just make designs and that's it?
I think in deal, it's most likely the value proposition has to be clear in order for us to find way to design. So we work very closely, despite we're very fully remote, but we do work very closely. And I think it's back to the point you mentioned, Chris, human versus the technologies. I believe it's like a sword of two ways. You've got to find the balance in between to reach your goal, wherever that is in each company.
And there we have both. And both or even more. I think that the definition of design has broadened so much that now we have designers who do like a lot of styling and making things look good. But also we have designers who are interested in strategy or talking business.
Which proportion is it? How many you have in strategy level and the ones who are working on styling, design systems and so on?
I think it's it constantly changes. I think it could be not half and half because I think it's less.
Half and half. Okay, but around it.
Less the ones who talk business or less to talk business, or get into strategy topics. But still, people is melting or molding. So
you would say that it happened in the transition that more designers go on, to have strategic decisions and so on.
Yeah, it's kind of part of the maturity process, I think, also for designers as well. My talk is a bit about that too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Please stay tuned for Marcela's talk. And what do you think, Mauri?
Well, I like your point. I think step number 5 is missing. And I think it will be great. Maybe we update it for next year. Look, first, I think we are all customer. the beauty of being in banking is that everyone has a bank account. All of you has a bank account. So we are all customer. And when we started this journey here in Este, we did not do a lot of research, actually. We just said, you know, what the bank was offering and all the competitor around us was offering the same is pretty crappy. If we would do something we love it, I was kind of confident that everyone around us would love it too. And we are designer a very diversified group of people. There are, therefore, I think if we would do something we truly love as a team, I think it will work out very nicely into a mass market banking. Of course, if you design something for private banking, for ultra-net individual, and you are not one of them, it requires a bit of fantasy to understand how these people are thinking. And the fact that the richer they are, probably the more greedy they are, right? But in our case, for mass market, I think we are all customer, and therefore we should really try to do something that we think is meaningful and is helpful for us first, and having the ambition that if it's helpful for us, it probably will be helpful for lots of people out there which are like us, number one. And number two, I would really suggest to think about that we live in a world where design will make a difference. So we are a stock-listed company, so I'm receiving regularly, every week, mostly investor report or analyst report. And guess what? We are having those analyst reports, we are getting App Store rating evaluation. So we are ranked by investor, I don't know, people from Morgan Stanley from New York, they are looking at banks based on the quality of their apps, based on the App Store ratings. And this makes a difference on the market. So the things is getting there even in the most boring part of banking, you know, the one which is about profits and return on capital and all these things. We are start having an impact there as well. It's the very beginning, but more and more investors try to ask, okay, how is your process? How is your experience? How is your design team? How many users do you have? How much they are growing? And so on and so on. So it's getting really interesting. So I'm very positive, actually, and very optimistic.
I like that you brought, like, one of the metrics could be the App Store ratings, you know? So this is one of the way how we designers can demonstrate our value. Maybe you can also share some other examples, how else maybe we can, you know, prove our value, demonstrate it, which metrics could you use, what maybe you already use something in your company to show, like, you know, the design has a value.
I think from my perspective, if I may jump in,
Yeah, sure.
There's a two sides of every story. There's the sentimental part, people can relate to it or not. And the second part is the factual, which is your data, your research. So in order for you to sell the idea really well, to make sure, have you got these two parts covered? Do you know your audience? Do you know your stakeholders? Do you know the people that you're going to present to? And have you got your data behind it? And that's, I think, if you put it on together, the formula for selling.
Thank you. Marcela?
I love that part of the stakeholders and your data manager, because for us it's partnering with the right people who is good at doing their part of the numbers, and them being convinced of our ideas, like in a little bit like Maylin said, like selling, so they can make the business case themselves, because they are better at that than us. But if you have the right partners in your projects, they are the ones who sell your projects. Like, it's not even us ourselves who sell them. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. And Chris, maybe with some of, I don't know, discussion with some fintech leaders and so on, some maybe insights that you can share?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things, I think. I think perhaps the reason why the design function is not just really taking that like as a strategic level currently in financial services. It's partly because of how you define yourselves. I'm pretty sure that if I was to ask someone randomly here, so what do you do? Very few of you will tell me I'm a business leader. You'll probably start, I'm a designer. And I think that means that you need to start thinking of yourselves as people that understand your business and people that can really make a difference at the top line of the business. Now, one of the things that we see in the Nordics, and that's really where my experience is based, is that the pendulum went from we have to digitalize everything, right? Because of economies of scale, because of convenience, the digital channel. Okay, fine. So they went through a the banks went through a very extensive project to digitalization. And now the pendulum's swinging in the other direction. It's like, okay, now we need to humanize things. So, for example, I was speaking to a founder from Norway, and he was saying something really remarkable. He was saying, we use technology to automate everything that the customer doesn't see. And the reason we do that is because it frees our time so that we can actually spend time with customers having those meaningful human-to-human relationships. And that's how we make a difference, understanding their needs and being able to spend more time develop. So he basically says, we're now hiring more people on the front end because these are the people that will understand what customers are going through.
Yeah, that we also need to understand not only technology, but also people.
Yeah, because technology is just a tool. And once we get, we have PSD2, PSD3, we have APIs, it will become commoditized. Anyone will be able to say, oh, a function, here it is, there's an API, now I have this function, and it's implemented into my product in 3 days. Wow. You'll have to do it whether you want it or not. So the question is what comes after that, and I think that's where the role of the designer will become fundamental.
Yeah, and I like your point about that we as designers need also to think about ourselves as business leaders. And this is also one of our core topics of this conference as well. How we, maybe you also can share some tips for the audience here, how we can, as designers, become the leaders, as the business leaders, because you already have experience also in that. That would be super interesting and maybe also valuable for sure for our audience.
Well, if I can add just one more example.
Sure.
I think if you think of perhaps the biggest and most famous design company globally, probably many of you would agree with me that it's Apple. Now, who is the second most powerful person in Apple? Well, at the time where Steve Jobs was around, it was Johnny Ive.
Yeah.
He was he had unrestricted access to every single part of the business, and he was the lead designer. So that really tells us something, right?
That for sure. When you have an lead position designers, it's yes. Something to add?
To encourage people to go higher, or I think it's not for everyone. You need to understand your team and see the ability of, for example, one of my designers who was a senior was great at listening to people, great with people, great at giving feedback. So I helped him and say, what about putting you forward for that position? And he was like, I don't think this is for me. I like to design. And I'm like, just give it a try. Nothing to lose. See if you like it or not. So he got in and he smashed it. He's one of the best. The key is to see these things. If you monitor your team to the way, is this great? Because you are in position, you're conducting. Someone's great at optimizing, someone great at greenfield projects, someone great at whatever. So put the right people in the right places help dramatically.
Well, he was lucky that he had you as a manager. I hope he also actually watching the conference.
I'm sure he is.
Yeah, but imagine that, you don't have a manager like you.
Right.
How I can, grow to this,
It's I think there's a book by Napoleon, it's Think and Grow Rich. It's an old book, but fantastic book, encourage you all to read it. One of the values he talked about is to have the burning desire for whatever your goal is. So if your goal is to build something or to be the great designer or to be whatever it is, make sure you have that. And it will help you to persevere. Nothing is easy. To get to a point where you want to be, there will be hardship, and be prepared for it. And you can never be fully prepared. So whatever comes to your way, make sure to be adaptable.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you. Mari? Well, because you're our...
It's a mixture between curiosity and arrogance. I think, I think you need to have the curiosity of looking at new stuff. Let's face it, running a bank is complicated, and it's not only about, there is much more than what all of us see every day, including myself, right? It's complicated, it's one of those, it's one of those macro business, right? If you're located in a region, in a country that is going up, your numbers normally goes up. If you're in a country that goes down, your number goes down. So you're very much going into the wave. Huh? Yeah. And however, there is some beauty and there is some interesting in all of these parts of a bank. So there is a curiosity on one side, but there needs to be a little arrogant to believe that, okay, I try to understand this, and then I could have an impact. I can improve it. I can change it. I have this little idea there, and maybe I'm not shy enough because I don't have an MBA on finances. And I raise my hand, or we should raise our hand and say, hey, I have this little idea, how about trying? And what you will discover is that the whole thing is not as sophisticated as it looks like from the outside. It's not so, it's complicated, but it's not that there are hundreds of hours of complicated people thinking about. No, it's very emotional. It's very much stomach driven. When you build up a strategy, it's all about, of course, you have numbers, you project things, you see how the economy is going, you can tune your strategy. But I think having people raising their hand and say, I have that little idea, or I see this in a slightly different way, or can we try this and that? Very naively, it helps a lot, and it helps every company, and it will be highly welcome, I would say. At least I can speak with the business areas where I'm part of it. It's highly welcome. Therefore, I really think that that's why I consider this a bit of arrogance. You need to have arrogance to raise your hand, ask questions, even though you're not the best expert on the room, and you will find something magical out of it. I think something great can come out of that.
I am the opposite. I kind of say that we designers like to think we are the center of the universe, and like everything goes around us.
Is it not true?
And in order to have an impact in an organization, it's good to find the right partners, and like also to be aware that we are not the only ones changing organizations, that there are other pockets in the organizations trying to change and make it different, and bring like other ways of thinking and working to these places. So, because these are huge places with a long history that are kind of encalcitrated, so you need like more sources of power to move them and to break all that calc that has built in. So I think it's good to identify who are all those, and like team up and like go and push and supporting to each other, and also with people who has very different skills and very different perspectives as you, so they can have these changes in different ways, and like little by little like start changing in a way, and also perhaps we can also change. So it's not only about us changing organizations, but also the organizations changing us. Right? So
yeah, that's true. You know, so we discussed that design for sure has a value, and we should be in the leading positions, but maybe it will be a bit controversial that why then not that many designers in the leading positions? Should it be more designers in the leading position, or actually, you know, it's fine? What would you think? Yeah, maybe
Sure.
look like...
Thank you. Design is a leader position. I think it's, you mentioned it quite a lot in your first presentation. It's quite crucial to actually understand and see that different perspective to get into that. But now, the challenge is to get into that. You have generations of different thinking, like, comes into you. Like, you know, everyone think about numbers. Like, you know, when it gets to the exec level, you know, going into fundraising, etc. It's all about that. But do people see from the perspective of design? It's often missing. Like, you know, I think Apple is perhaps the exception, because Steve Jobs and Johnny were like designers from the beginning, and they took it from there. You know, it's a ride. And as long as you continue perceiving, like, you know, Nisha said, those who knows the why can bear any how. So as long as you believe in that, you'll find yourself there.
Very philosophical, thank you. Yeah, maybe...
I don't think we need designer I think we need design-minded people in the which is
Right.
different. It's different. I know lots of great designers who want to just design. That's okay. As I know lots of developers who just say, you know, I'm not interested in leading a developer team. I want to write code. Fine, give me code. That's okay. What we need design-minded people that are willing to take business responsibility and have the attitude of saying, I can change the business, I can change the world. Okay, that's easy, but I can change the business, right? I'm here to change the business. And the characteristic of a design-minded person is characteristic that we have crafted as designer all our career, from university down to our first internship job in an agency, where we actually learn how to execute precisely, where you don't learn in other industry, but executing, gluing things, making presentation, having things consistent, right? Using PowerPoint in a proper way, or not even using PowerPoint and switch to a better software. This is, execution makes a difference. So I would say design-minded people are people who really understand the difference between, the range between strategy, vision, but also they're able to simplify this down to, okay, we're gonna build it up together, step by step, one step after the other one. So answering your question, we need more, and there is a demand. There is a demand. There is a demand for design-minded people on the executive level of any company in any industry.
I will see your design-minded people, and I'll raise it to, I think what we need is a design-minded organization. Because the same thing happened with technology, right? Technology was somewhere in the basement with people working with the machines, and you only came to see them when something broke. Increasingly, people with technologies have been raising the stakes and then say, we now have companies that are led with people that understand technology. I think there's an element here of culture and organizational mindset that first needs to value the role of designers, to then say, yes, we need to give them this person a seat at the table. Because you can have design-minded people, but they won't get to those positions unless an organization with a very courageous board and a very courageous CEO says, yes, we need someone like that in the board.
Yeah, I think it's a really great insight. You know, it made me think that, you know, we as designers in our role, like to make more people aware about design and become design-minded. So we would have design like value that we don't need to prove and we don't need to fight for our seats at the table. So thank you so much for all your insights.
Welcome.
Guys, give applause to our amazing panelists. So thank you, Mauri, Chris,